Since every user action on the app will be hitting our servers, we need to structurally design ways to handle this communication. Let's figure out the APIs we will be using to interact with the backend services. Since we have two types of users, we could expose two APIs in two paths as well, customer and driver. To update driver's location, we could have something like put driver ID and give action as update location. This would also take some data like new latitude and new longitude. We will also need to fetch driver's location, so let's have a get request of driver ID, where action is trip request, and we send another param as driver location. Note that everything in system design is very open-ended, so if you want to suggest something like driver update location API where you post the data as ID driver ID, that is also fine. There is no problem with that at all. We can have another post API which drivers will use to accept a ride. So let's say driver ID, and action is accept ride. Each ride can be uniquely identified by a request ID, so we will send that as the payload. For a customer now, we could perhaps have a post request for him to request the ride. So customer ID, and action will be request ride. We will need to send data here like his location and where does he want to go. We also need to get a map on the passenger's device around him, which would have data for nearby drivers as well. So we can have something like get map, where maybe we can query by map and send users location in the parameters. We could have an API to retrieve location of an address as well, like get request of map, where instead of map we query by location and send the input address as request parameter. These are just some of the examples you can specify. Of course, there are a lot more possible APIs like cancel trip, accept trip, complete trip, but the interviewer would have gotten a really good idea by now for our approach to API design. Now I have used REST syntax above for simplicity, but we need to evaluate which communication protocol would suit our requirement. Let's consider a driver's update location. Since one driver will be sending updates every 3 seconds, we don't need an asynchronous approach here since we shouldn't be using message queues. Can we use REST here? We can, but we don't need a two-way communication. We don't really need REST. Also, REST isn't that efficient for a regular polling approach. Funnily enough though, most of the cab applications do use REST protocol today. We also don't need gRPC since this isn't an internal application. Now coming to WebSockets, these are actually efficient when it comes to polling application. So this would fit well for our update location API. We can also use UDP here since we need only one-way communication. And if a call fails, we'll anyway be retrying after 3 seconds, so it is fine. This is actually a classic application of UDP. Similarly, you can approach how to communicate for other APIs as well, but we should be fine with REST protocol in most of the cases.